This thrilling story begins in Japan, showing a man sitting and doing yoga. That man was a great warrior, a samurai. As the warrior meditated, he saw visions of someone engaged in battle. Suddenly, in his visions, he saw a lion that possessed various types of powers. The lion, using its unique techniques, wiped out all its enemies. After days of deep meditation, the great warrior finally opened his eyes. Now, the scene shifts to England, where we are introduced to Nathan, a former military soldier. Years ago, Nathan served as a soldier for the British government, which ruled over India. Following government orders, Nathan had taken the lives of thousands of Indians, a guilt that still haunted him. That is why, within a few years, he decided to leave his soldier's job forever. However, he still needed a source of income. So, he began performing on stage, sharing tales of bravery and different stories. Some of these stories were true, while others were made up, but either way, they entertained the audience. On stage, the show's host was calling for Nathan to come out, but as always, Nathan was inside, enjoying his beer. After repeatedly calling for him with no response, the frustrated host stormed in and angrily told Nathan that this would be his last show. He was tired of Nathan's antics and demanded that he perform the show immediately, after which he would be dismissed for good. Since Nathan had already taken the payment, he had no choice but to go on stage and start his act. He had an old gun, which he claimed was once used by his army to win great wars. According to him, this gun was the last remaining artifact of the world's most powerful warriors. The audience believed Nathan's story. To further impress them, he loaded the gun with bullets and began firing blindly in all directions. However, his aim was so precise that not a single bullet hit anyone. Despite this, the audience was terrified. Nathan was doing this because he knew this would be his last show anyway, so he wanted to put on an unusual act. Finishing his performance quickly, he left the stage, effectively being dismissed from the show forever. As soon as Nathan stepped outside, an old man started clapping continuously, as if he already knew him. However, Nathan had never seen this old man before. The old man placed his hand on Nathan's shoulder and said, "I have a great job for you, and it pays well." Since Nathan needed money, he decided to go with the old man. Nathan was then brought before the President of the British Empire, the same government he had once worked for. Surprisingly, the President of Japan was also present in the meeting. The British President explained to Nathan that the Japanese President was looking for a skilled master to train his soldiers in advanced combat techniques. Because of Nathan's vast experience in warfare, he had been recommended for the job. The President assured him that he would be paid handsomely. Without saying a word, Nathan got up and left. The British President followed him and asked, "What problem do you have with this job? It's a highly respectable position, and you'll be paid well." But Nathan refused. He couldn't teach people how to kill just for money. In fact, if given the chance, he would rather kill the British President himself. However, after a lot of insistence and persuasion, Nathan finally agreed to take the job. Once all the contracts were signed, he was sent to Japan. After stepping off the ship, Nathan met a fat man who was his translator. His job was to translate Japanese into Nathan's regional language. The man explained that Japan's government was focused on advancing its economy and technology. They had gathered the best architects and experts from various fields to make Japan the #1 nation. To strengthen their military, they had also summoned several great warriors, one of whom was Nathan. Nathan was then taken to meet the Japanese leaders, who welcomed him with great respect for accepting their job offer. The very next day, Nathan began his work, training numerous soldiers in combat techniques. On the very first day, Nathan gave all the soldiers clear instructions on what kind of training they would be receiving. Then, he got to work with great dedication. After finishing the training session, Nathan returned to his hotel room, where he started reading several books about the samurai. Samurai were legendary warriors of Japan, famous for their incredible combat skills. Even without weapons, they could defeat enemies using their unique techniques. Nathan was eager to study these samurai books, so he asked his translator to translate them for him. However, the fat man, who was his translator, hesitated and refused to do it. Frustrated, Nathan held a knife to the translator's throat and threatened him, "Either you read these to me, or I take your life." Left with no choice, the translator began translating the books. But suddenly, Nathan started experiencing strange flashbacks, visions of people being shot and killed. These were memories from his past, from the time when he had worked as a soldier for the British. Back then, he had only followed orders from his leaders, mindlessly carrying out their commands. As a result, he had taken the lives of many innocent Indians. At that time, Nathan didn't realize the weight of his actions. But now, in the present, he blamed himself for all the lives he had taken. After this intense moment, we return to the present timeline, where Nathan is shown giving high-level training to the soldiers. He tells one of his fellow trainers, "These soldiers are working really hard, and most of them have already become skilled at handling guns." However, within moments, the Colonel of Japan arrives to speak with Nathan. The Colonel informs him that a large group of samurai has taken control of several important government locations. As a result, the Japanese government has lost all control over those areas. "We need to defeat the samurai as soon as possible and reclaim those areas so that we can further develop Japan's infrastructure," the Colonel said. For this mission, he insisted on using the soldiers that Nathan had been training. However, Nathan objected, "The soldiers have just started their training. They are not yet fully prepared for this kind of battle. Sending them into war now would be like digging our own grave." But the Colonel was stubborn. He argued, "The samurai don't have advanced weapons. They only carry bows and arrows to attack. Our soldiers have modern firearms, which gives us a clear advantage." Nathan, realizing words wouldn't be enough, decided to demonstrate why the soldiers weren't ready. He pulled out his gun and aimed it at one of the soldiers. "Shoot me," he ordered, "or I'll kill you." The soldier, seeing a gun pointed at him for the first time, was terrified. Nathan, to further prove his point, took aim and shot the soldier's hat off. Terrified, the soldier fired his gun, but the bullet completely missed Nathan, merely grazing past him. This was exactly what Nathan wanted to show the Colonel. The soldiers were still inexperienced. They needed more time to refine their protection skills and techniques. But the Colonel and his officers refused to listen. Left with no choice, Nathan was forced to gather his bravest soldiers to fight against the dangerous samurai. At sunrise, Nathan led his soldiers to the battlefield. Fully armed and equipped with ammunition, the troops were ready for battle, at least on the surface. However, many of the soldiers had no idea what to do. They were simply waiting for Nathan's command, at which point they would fire their guns. Then, within moments, a massive group of samurai emerged from the jungle, riding on horseback, charging fiercely toward the soldiers. Nathan ordered his soldiers to fire their rifles, and they blindly shot at the samurai. Initially, they managed to take down many of them. But the samurai, armed with razor-sharp bows and arrows, fought back fiercely, taking down many soldiers in return. Within moments, the battlefield turned into utter chaos, and it became clear that the samurai were overpowering the soldiers. Nathan fought alone against the samurai, slashing through them one by one. But then, his old friend was killed by a samurai. Enraged, Nathan mounted a horse and fought like a samurai himself, wielding his sword with skill. However, he was eventually thrown off the horse. Despite this, Nathan refused to give up. He was fighting against 5 samurai at once. Just then, the leader of the samurai arrived, the man who commanded the entire organization. When he saw Nathan fighting so skillfully, he was shocked. How is a normal man, without training, able to fight so many samurai, he thought. Nathan had already taken down almost every samurai that came his way. But then, a deadly-looking samurai approached, appearing capable of ending Nathan in an instant. Nathan pretended to lose consciousness, and the moment the samurai let his guard down, Nathan plunged a sharp spear into his body, instantly killing him. The remaining samurai rushed forward to kill Nathan, but at that moment, their leader stopped them. "Take this man with us," he commanded. Nathan had no idea that his life was about to change forever. The samurai leader, Katsumoto, took Nathan back to their village. Some of Katsumoto's men were angry. "Why did we keep him alive?" they questioned. "He is our enemy. We should kill him immediately." But Katsumoto disagreed. "This man possesses incredible fighting techniques," he explained. "Through him, we can understand how our enemies train and become strong." Nathan had suffered severe injuries, so he was taken for treatment. A beautiful woman tended to his wounds, carefully bandaging them. Within a few days, Nathan regained consciousness and had almost completely recovered. For the first time, he got to see the samurai culture up close. The people of the village were peaceful and kind, and they believed in maintaining harmony. Nathan approached Katsumoto and began asking questions. His first question was, "Who was that man in the red suit in the jungle?" Nathan asked, "Who is that woman taking care of me?" Katsumoto replied, "She is my sister, and the red samurai you killed was her husband." Nathan was utterly confused. He had killed this woman's husband, yet she was caring for him, feeding him, and treating his wounds. He couldn't understand the behavior of these people because, in his world, such kindness didn't exist. Nathan then asked Katsumoto, "What is your purpose? Why didn't you kill me? Why did you bring me here?" Katsumoto explained, "We need to understand how your soldiers fight. We want to know how Japanese soldiers are being trained and what kinds of weapons they possess. Over the next few days, Nathan remained in the village and started observing the samurai way of life. He was fascinated by their culture, where respect and care for one another were paramount. They lived as a close-knit family, something Nathan had never experienced before. It felt strange to him. As he explored the village, Nathan noticed that the samurai truly lacked advanced weapons. They only had swords, yet they could take down multiple enemies with their skills. He imagined what kind of destruction they could unleash if they ever obtained modern weapons. No Japanese soldier would be able to stand against them. While walking through the village, he saw some children practicing sword fighting. Nathan took a sword and taught them how to hold it properly and strike effectively. The villagers, seeing how he interacted with the children, were overjoyed. They had started accepting him as part of their community. One night, while celebrating with the villagers, a group of enemy assassins suddenly attacked, intent on killing the samurai. Nathan quickly took Katsumoto inside for protection, as the assassins were after him. For the first time, Nathan was fighting alongside the samurai. He tried his best to fend off the assassins, but they outnumbered him. Eventually, they managed to capture Nathan and were about to kill him when a young boy, one whom Nathan had trained, ran to retrieve his father's sword. Gathering his courage, the boy launched an attack on the assassins, turning the tide of the battle. During the chaos, the assassins got distracted, allowing Nathan to break free from captivity and kill his captor. He rushed to help Katsumoto, and together, they managed to eliminate all the remaining assassins. Katsumoto was baffled. Who were these attackers, and who had sent them? Nathan speculated that they might be Japanese soldiers sent by the colonel to kill Katsumoto. Realizing the increasing threat, Nathan took it upon himself to protect the samurai. Over time, Katsumoto and his family saw Nathan's true nature. They understood that he was a good man. One day, Katsumoto approached Nathan and said, "If the president truly wants us to leave, I am willing to surrender and sacrifice my life." Nathan replied, "That's not the case at all. The Japanese president was never against the samurai. It's the colonel who is fueling this conflict, as he wants to win the next election and seize full control over Japan." After spending several days with the samurai, Nathan finally returned to the training camp, the same place where he had been training soldiers. Meanwhile, Katsumoto went to meet the Japanese president for the first time. During their conversation, Katsumoto discovered that the president was not an evil man. He had never intended to eliminate the samurai, nor was he behind Japan's modernization efforts. Everything was being orchestrated by the colonel. Due to the president's young age, many citizens refused to take him seriously. Even the president himself had started believing that he should hand over his position to the colonel. However, Katsumoto strongly advised against it, warning that if the colonel gained power, he would destroy everything. Katsumoto urged the president to let the samurai live freely, without any restrictions on their way of life. Shortly after, the colonel summoned Nathan for questioning. He demanded that Nathan reveal everything about the samurai, their way of life, their fighting techniques, and the weapons they possessed. Nathan simply responded, "I was a prisoner there." Nathan feigned ignorance, denying any knowledge of the samurai. However, the Japanese colonel wasn't convinced. He reminded Nathan of his past role in training soldiers and even offered him double the money this time. But Nathan, uninterested in the colonel's schemes, simply walked away without responding. This further fueled the colonel's suspicions. He was now certain that Nathan knew a lot about the samurai but was deliberately keeping it a secret. Fearing betrayal, the colonel issued a direct order to his men: if Nathan was caught meeting any samurai, he was to be executed immediately. Meanwhile, the president publicly announced that the samurai were now free to live wherever they pleased, without restrictions. Soon, a meeting of the Japanese committee was held in Tokyo, and Katsumoto was summoned. However, as he entered, the colonel ordered him to leave his sword outside. A new rule was being proposed: no samurai would be allowed to carry a sword anymore. Katsumoto firmly responded, "I will not follow your orders, I will only listen to the president." Strangely, the president remained silent, offering no support. Taking advantage of this, the colonel ordered Katsumoto's arrest, sentencing him to imprisonment. However, instead of a regular sentence, Katsumoto was taken to a secluded room where a man placed a sword before him. The message was clear: as punishment, the colonel had ordered him to take his own life. By this time, Nathan's contract with the military had ended, and he was preparing to leave Japan for good. But just as he was about to depart, a group of men wielding samurai swords surrounded him. Nathan, however, refused to back down. Everything he had learned while living with the samurai now came into play. He fought with the same precision and skill as the warriors who had trained him. Even Nathan himself was surprised by how much he had improved in such a short time. One by one, he defeated all his attackers, killing them with ease. Without wasting a moment, he rushed inside to rescue Katsumoto. "We have to leave immediately," Nathan urged. More forces could be on their way. Nathan and Katsumoto fought their way out, eliminating security guards as they moved forward. Katsumoto's eldest son had also arrived, eager to help them escape. However, the security forces continued firing relentlessly. Despite the danger, Nathan managed to get almost everyone across the jungle to safety. But Katsumoto's son was still trapped inside the building. Without hesitation, Nathan rushed back in and rescued him. However, by the time he brought him out, the young warrior had already been shot multiple times. Lying in his father's arms, he took his final breaths. For the first time, tears welled up in Katsumoto's eyes as he watched his son fade away. With his dying words, the young man urged his father, "Take everyone and leave. Your life is more important. Don't worry about me, I'll manage." Katsumoto and Nathan had no choice but to leave. They mounted their horses and rode toward the samurai village. Upon their return, Katsumoto gathered his people and made a firm declaration: "A great war is coming. We will not back down." At dawn, the samurai warriors assembled, preparing for battle against the Japanese army. However, they were vastly outnumbered. Katsumoto turned to Nathan and shared a story. Years ago, 300 brave samurai fought against thousands of soldiers. They had no advanced weapons, yet they used their intelligence to defeat the enemy. Nathan listened intently and then proposed a strategy: "We must lure the Japanese soldiers as close as possible. That way, their guns will become useless, and we can defeat them in close combat with our swords." Together, Nathan and Katsumoto refined their battle plan, ensuring it was foolproof. Meanwhile, Katsumoto's sister, the widow of the man Nathan had killed, approached him. She had finally accepted Nathan's presence among them. "I would be honored," she said, "if you wore my husband's armor in battle." Nathan, deeply moved, donned the red samurai armor. Clad in the traditional warrior's attire, he looked every bit the fearless warrior he had become. Now, the entire samurai army gathered, ready to face the Japanese soldiers, who stood opposite them in overwhelming numbers, 10 times larger than the samurai forces. When the military captain arrived, he was shocked to see Nathan fighting alongside the samurai. Nathan simply responded, "We'll meet on the battlefield." Both sides braced for battle. The Japanese soldiers, armed with rifles and artillery, launched the first attack. As bullets rained down, some samurai appeared to retreat in fear. However, this was all part of Nathan and Katsumoto's strategy. The Japanese colonel, confident in his army's dominance, ordered his troops to advance. Meanwhile, Nathan and his samurai warriors hid behind a makeshift wooden shield, minimizing their injuries. Nathan had given clear instructions: they would strike only when the enemy was reloading their rifles. As expected, once the soldiers ran out of bullets and began reloading, Nathan gave the order to attack. The samurai, having planned everything meticulously, swiftly launched flaming arrows, setting the battlefield ablaze. Many Japanese soldiers perished in the fire, and part of their formation collapsed. Nathan's strategy had worked flawlessly. However, despite the heavy losses, the Japanese army's sheer numbers gave them an advantage. They regrouped and resumed their attack, now relying on their guns. One by one, samurai warriors fell under the relentless gunfire. The Japanese colonel issued a ruthless command: "Leave no one alive. Kill them all." Nathan's carefully laid plan began to fall apart. Within moments, the samurai forces dwindled to a fraction of their original strength. They could no longer hold their ground against the relentless onslaught. Seeing his people fall one after another, Katsumoto felt helpless. The harsh reality set in: they had lost the war. He knew what had to be done. Katsumoto, embracing the samurai tradition, grabbed the sword from Nathan's hands and plunged it into his own stomach. As he took his final breaths, he upheld the samurai code, choosing death over surrender to maintain his honor. In samurai culture, a leader who faced inevitable defeat either took their own life or asked a trusted companion to do it, ensuring they would not be slain by the enemy. Witnessing this, the military captain ordered his soldiers to cease fire. Nearly all the samurai had perished, and there was no reason to continue the battle. As Katsumoto died in Nathan's arms, the soldiers paid their respects by bowing their heads, honoring the bravest warrior they had ever seen. With his contract fulfilled, Nathan prepared to return to America. Before leaving, he visited the Japanese president and presented him with Katsumoto's sword, a symbol of an honorable and fearless samurai. However, the Japanese colonel opposed this, warning the president that Nathan was an enemy and that he should not accept anything from him. For the first time, the president ignored the colonel's words and took the sword. Nathan then shared Katsumoto's final thoughts, telling the president that Katsumoto had been so loyal to him that he was even willing to die for his honor. The president was deeply shaken. He realized that despite the government's mistreatment of the samurai, warriors like Katsumoto still upheld loyalty and honor. At that moment, the truth dawned upon him: the colonel had been manipulating the modernization of Japan for his own gain. Recognizing the colonel's deception, the president immediately dismissed him from his position and took full control of his leadership. Nathan was sent back to his homeland, having played a crucial role in preserving the samurai's legacy. And with that, our story comes to an end.